Most people spend their entire lives reacting to whatever life throws at them, never realizing they're living on autopilot. You wake up stressed, check your phone, put out fires all day, collapse exhausted at night, and wonder why nothing ever changes. What if I told you that the most successful people on Earth follow 7 specific principles that completely rewire how they approach every single day, and you can start using them tomorrow morning? Let me tell you about Marcus. He's a project manager at a tech company, always busy, always stressed. One Tuesday morning, his boss drops a last-minute presentation on his desk, due by end of day. At the same time, his phone buzzes with angry texts from his girlfriend about missing dinner plans again. His inbox has 47 unread emails. He feels his chest tighten. Marcus does what most people do. He panics. He opens his email, starts replying randomly, checks Slack, refreshes his inbox again, texts his girlfriend back with excuses, and 2 hours disappear with nothing meaningful accomplished. The presentation barely started. The relationship, another crack in the foundation. Here's what Marcus didn't understand. He wasn't failing because he lacked time or talent. He was failing because he never learned the fundamental operating system for human effectiveness. And that's exactly what Stephen Covey cracked open in The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. This isn't about productivity hacks or morning routines. This is about rewiring your entire approach to life from the inside out. Chapter 1. The map is not the territory. You think you see the world as it is. You don't. You see the world as you are. Every single person walks around with an invisible map in their head. This map tells them what's important, what's dangerous, what's fair, what's possible. And here's the brutal truth. Most people never question whether their map is accurate. They just assume it's reality. I'll show you what this looks like. Sarah works in marketing. She's convinced her boss hates her because he never gives her feedback. Every meeting, she interprets his silence as disappointment. She starts avoiding him, putting in minimal effort, building resentment. Meanwhile, her boss is confused why Sarah suddenly seems disengaged. He's just been busy and assumes no news is good news. Same situation. 2 completely different maps. Sarah's map says silence equals disapproval. Her boss's map says silence equals everything's fine. Neither is right or wrong. They're just different paradigms, different ways of seeing the world. Covey calls this your paradigm, and it's the lens through which you filter everything. Your paradigm was built from your childhood, your culture, your experiences, your wounds, and until you realize you're looking through a lens, you'll keep mistaking your interpretation for objective truth. Here's where it gets powerful. The moment you understand that your paradigm is just one possible way of seeing things, you gain the ability to shift it. You can choose a new lens. You can rewrite your map. Try this tomorrow. Pick one situation that frustrates you. Maybe it's a coworker who never responds to your messages. Instead of your automatic interpretation, write down 3 other possible explanations for their behavior. Maybe they're overwhelmed. Maybe they process information differently. Maybe they didn't see it as urgent. You just created 3 new maps. And suddenly, you have options instead of just reactions. This is the foundation everything else builds on. Because if you can't see that your current way of seeing the world is just one option among many, you'll never be able to change your habits. You'll just keep reacting from the same old paradigm, wondering why nothing improves. But once you get this, everything shifts. And that brings us to something most people completely misunderstand about how change actually works. Chapter 2. Inside out, not outside in. Stop trying to change your circumstances. Start changing yourself. Everyone wants the shortcut. They want the promotion without developing leadership skills, They want the relationship without becoming emotionally mature. They want respect without being respectable. It doesn't work that way. Covey introduces what he calls the inside-out approach, and it's the opposite of how most self-help content works. Most advice tells you to change your environment, optimize your schedule, find better people, get a new job. That's outside-in thinking. It fails because you bring the same broken patterns to every new situation. Inside out means you start with your character, your motives, your paradigms. You fix the source code before worrying about the user interface. Let me give you a real example. David wanted to improve his marriage. He read relationship books, planned date nights, bought flowers. Nothing changed. His wife still seemed distant, so he tried harder, planned more elaborate surprises, felt increasingly frustrated when she didn't respond the way he hoped. Here's what David missed. The real problem wasn't his actions, it was his motive. Deep down, he was doing nice things to get something back, to make her behave differently, to fix her. She could feel that transactional energy, and it created more distance, not less. When David finally shifted to inside-out thinking, he asked himself harder questions. Am I genuinely listening when she talks, or just waiting for my turn? Am I trying to control her emotions? Am I showing up as the partner I'd want to be married to? He stopped performing gestures and started becoming different, more present, more honest, less manipulative. And ironically, that's when things started changing, because she was finally dealing with a different person, not the same guy doing nicer things. This is uncomfortable because it puts all the responsibility on you. You can't blame your boss, your parents, your circumstances anymore. But that's also where your power lives, because you can't control other people or external events, but you can always control how you show up. The question is, are you building your life from the inside out, or are you still waiting for the world to change first? And here's where most people stumble right out of the gate, before they even get to the actual habits. Chapter 3. Habit 1. Be proactive, not reactive. Between stimulus and response, there's a gap. Your entire life is determined by what you do in that gap. Most people are reactive. Something happens, they respond automatically. Boss criticizes them, they get defensive. Traffic's bad, they get angry. Weather's gloomy, they feel depressed. They've handed complete control of their emotional state to external circumstances. Proactive people understand something radically different. They realize they can choose their response, not just their actions, but their entire inner state, and that tiny gap between what happens and how they respond. That's where freedom lives. Here's the test. Listen to your language for one full day. Notice how often you say things like, "She made me so angry," or "I had to yell because he wouldn't listen," or "This weather is ruining my mood." Every single one of those statements is giving away your power to something outside yourself. Proactive language sounds different. I chose to get angry when she said that. I decided yelling was my best option in that moment. I'm letting this weather affect my mood. See the difference? You're taking ownership of your responses. Let me show you what this looks like in action. Jennifer works in customer service. A client calls screaming about a mistake that wasn't even her fault. Old Jennifer would have gotten defensive, made excuses, maybe even cried in the bathroom after. New Jennifer, the proactive version, takes a breath in that gap between the screaming and her response. She recognizes she can't control this person's anger. She can only control how she handles it. She listens fully, acknowledges the frustration, focuses on solutions. She doesn't absorb the emotional attack as truth about herself. Same situation, completely different experience. Why? Because she expanded that gap, and chose her response instead of just reacting.
Here's your challenge.
For the next 24 hours, catch yourself every time you're about to blame someone or something for how you feel. Pause. Reframe it. Take ownership. It'll feel weird at first. You might even resist it because being a victim is sometimes easier than being responsible. But this is the first habit for a reason. If you can't take responsibility for your responses, none of the other habits will work. You'll just be a passenger in your own life, blaming the driver. Now, being proactive is powerful, but it's useless if you don't know where you're actually going. Chapter 4, Habit 2. Start with the end in mind. If you don't decide what success looks like, someone else will decide for you. Here's a thought experiment that's uncomfortable but necessary. Imagine your funeral. 3 people stand up to speak. A family member, a close friend, a colleague. What do you want them to say about you? Not what they probably will say, what you'd want them to say if you lived according to your deepest values. Most people never do this exercise because it forces them to confront a harsh truth. They're climbing a ladder leaned against the wrong wall. They're working 80 hours a week for a promotion they don't even want. They're sacrificing their health for money they'll spend on medical bills. They're neglecting relationships that actually matter while impressing people who don't. Covey calls this beginning with the end in mind. It means getting crystal clear on your personal mission before you start taking action. Because busy and effective are not the same thing. You can be incredibly busy moving in the wrong direction. I watched this play out with a friend named Alex. Brilliant software engineer, got recruited by a top tech company. Amazing salary, prestigious title, everyone impressed. 2 years in, he's miserable. The work feels meaningless. The culture is toxic. He's gained weight, lost touch with friends, hasn't picked up his guitar in months. Alex never asked himself the fundamental question, what kind of life do I actually want to build? He just said yes to the most impressive sounding option and hoped it would make him happy. It didn't, because achievement without alignment is just expensive emptiness. When Alex finally wrote out his personal mission statement, everything became clear. He valued creativity, autonomy, and deep relationships more than status or money. His current job scored 0 on all 3. So he made a change, took a pay cut, joined a smaller company, started playing music again. 3 years later, he's objectively less successful by society's metrics and subjectively happier than he's ever been. Here's what you need to do. Block out 30 minutes this week. Actually put it in your calendar. Write down your answer to this. If you could design your ideal life 5 years from now, what would it look like? Not what your parents want. Not what looks good on Instagram. What you actually want. Be specific. What kind of work are you doing? What kind of person are you? What kind of relationships do you have? How do you spend your time? What have you built or created? This becomes your personal constitution. And suddenly, decisions get easier, because you're not asking, will this impress people? You're asking, does this move me toward my end vision or away from it? Most people spend more time planning a vacation than planning their life. Don't be most people, but even with perfect clarity on where you're going, you'll fail if you don't understand what actually deserves your time. Chapter 5, Habit 3. Put first things first. You don't have a time management problem. You have a priority problem. Covey introduces something called the time management matrix, and it's going to expose exactly why you're always busy but never productive. There are 4 quadrants where all your activities fall. Quadrant 1. Urgent and important. Crises, deadlines, emergencies. This is firefighting mode. Quadrant 2. Not urgent, but important. Planning, relationship building, exercise, learning, This is where real growth happens. Quadrant 3. Urgent but not important. Interruptions. Some emails. Other people's priorities. This feels productive, but isn't. Quadrant 4. Not urgent and not important. Time wasters. Mindless scrolling. Busy work. This is just escape. Now here's the brutal truth. Most people live in quadrants 1 and 3. They're constantly reacting to what's urgent, whether it's actually important or not. They never spend time in quadrant 2 because it doesn't scream for attention. And because they ignore quadrant 2, they create more quadrant 1 crises. Let me show you what this looks like. Rachel is a freelance designer. She never does prospecting for new clients because it's not urgent. That's quadrant 2. Then suddenly, her biggest client doesn't renew. Now she has a crisis. Quadrant 1. She scrambles, takes a low-paying job out of desperation, resents it, and the cycle continues. If Rachel had spent just 2 hours a week in quadrant 2 building her network and pipeline, she'd never have the quadrant 1 emergency. But quadrant 2 never feels urgent, so it gets ignored until it becomes urgent. The habit is simple but hard. Schedule your quadrant 2 activities first, not the urgent stuff. The important stuff. Because if you don't schedule time for planning, relationship building, skill development, and self-care, those things will never happen. Urgent will always win. Try this. Look at your calendar for next week right now. How much time is blocked for quadrant 2 activities? If the answer is 0, you're setting yourself up for crisis mode. Block 2 hours this week for something important, but not urgent. Maybe it's learning a skill that will pay off in 6 months. Maybe it's a difficult conversation you've been avoiding. Maybe it's planning your next quarter instead of just reacting to this week. It'll feel wrong because nothing's on fire. You'll be tempted to fill that time with urgent tasks. Don't. Because this is the difference between people who build successful lives and people who just survive. And here's something critical. You can't do any of this alone. Which brings us to the shift from independence to interdependence. Chapter 6. The emotional bank account. Every relationship has an invisible account. You're either making deposits or withdrawals. Covey's concept of the emotional bank account is simple. Every interaction either builds trust or depletes it. Keeping commitments, showing kindness, listening deeply, those are deposits. Breaking promises, being dismissive, refusing to apologize, those are withdrawals. Here's what most people miss. Major withdrawals happen fast, but deposits take time. You can destroy years of trust with one betrayal, but rebuilding requires consistent small deposits over time. I saw this destroy a business partnership. 2 founders, Mike and Lisa, built a company together. Mike kept missing important meetings, small withdrawals from the emotional bank account. He figured his skill made up for it. But Lisa was tracking every withdrawal. Meeting missed, commitment broken. The account went negative. When it exploded, Mike was confused. He didn't realize he'd been making withdrawals for months with 0 deposits. Here's what deposits look like. Remembering details someone mentioned, showing up when inconvenient, admitting when you're wrong, being present when they're struggling. Try this. Pick 3 important relationships. Ask honestly, is the account positive or negative? If negative, what's one deposit you can make this week? Do it. Because effectiveness alone means nothing. And once you understand trust, you unlock the most powerful communication tool that exists. Chapter 7, Habit 5. Seek first to understand, then to be understood. You're not listening, you're waiting to talk. Most conversations aren't conversations. They're two people taking turns waiting for the other to shut up, so they can say what they wanted to say anyway. Nobody's actually listening. Everyone's just reloading. Covey says most people listen with the intent to reply, not to understand. And this one shift, actually listening to understand, changes everything. Relationships, negotiations, conflicts, sales, parenting, all of it. Here's what fake listening looks like. Your friend tells you they're stressed about work. Before they finish, you're already formulating advice. You should just talk to your boss. That's what I did. You're not listening to them. You're listening to your own autobiography, finding ways to relate it back to your experience. Real listening, empathic listening, means you enter their frame of reference. You try to see the world through their eyes. You reflect back what they're feeling, not just what they're saying. Same scenario, different approach. Your friend says they're stressed about work. You respond, "Sounds like you're feeling overwhelmed and maybe not sure how to bring it up with your boss." You're not fixing. You're not relating it to yourself. You're just trying to understand their experience. Watch what happens. They feel heard. Their defenses drop. They open up more. Now they're thinking out loud, often arriving at their own solutions. And when they do ask for advice, they're actually ready to hear it because they feel understood first. I used this with my teenage nephew who was failing math. Old approach. Lecture him about responsibility, share my own school stories, tell him what to do. Result: eye rolls, shut down, nothing changed. New approach. Seems like math is really frustrating right now. What's the hardest part? Just listened. Really listened. Turned out he wasn't lazy. He was lost 3 chapters back and too embarrassed to ask for help. Once I understood that, we could actually solve the real problem. Most conflicts happen because both people are trying to be understood without first understanding. Two people screaming their perspective louder and louder, neither one actually listening. Here's your practice. Next conversation you have, try this. Don't interrupt. Don't relate it to your experience. Don't jump to solutions. Just listen and occasionally reflect back what you're hearing. It sounds like you're saying, watch how the conversation shifts. It'll feel unnatural at first because you're used to performing, not listening. But this is how you build real influence, because people don't care what you know until they know that you care. And when you finally master this, you unlock the ability to create something way bigger than yourself. Chapter 8. Habit 6. Synergize. 1 + 1 can equal 3, but only if you value differences. Synergy is when two people with different perspectives create something neither could have created alone. It's not compromise where everyone loses. It's creative cooperation where everyone wins bigger. But most people see differences as threats, not opportunities. Here's a real scenario. A marketing team plans a campaign. Sarah wants social media. Tom wants traditional advertising. Typical outcome, they argue, someone wins, resentment builds. Synergistic approach, they explore why each believes their method works. Sarah explains social media allows engagement and testing. Tom explains traditional advertising builds credibility and reaches different demographics. Instead of fighting, they ask, what if we integrated both? Social media for engagement, traditional for scaling what works. Neither person's original idea, something better, that's synergy. I watched this transform a failing product launch. Design wanted simplicity. Engineering wanted features. Endless meetings, zero progress. Finally, what if we launch simple but build modularity so users can add features? Synergy. The product launched clean but expandable. Both teams won. Here's your challenge. Next time someone disagrees, get curious. Say, tell me why you see it that way. Really explore. Then look for the third option that honors both viewpoints. This only works if you believe their perspective has value. Synergy requires genuine openness to being wrong. When you get it right, you stop competing and start creating. But without this final habit, everything eventually falls apart. Chapter 9. Habit 7. Sharpen the saw. You can't keep cutting wood if you never sharpen the saw. Imagine someone furiously sawing down a tree, working harder and harder, making less and less progress. You ask why they don't stop and sharpen the saw. They respond, "I don't have time, I'm too busy sawing." That's most people's lives. Working harder with increasingly dull tools, refusing to pause and renew because they're too busy being busy. Covey divides renewal into 4 dimensions: physical, mental, spiritual, and social-emotional. Neglect any one, and your effectiveness deteriorates. Physical renewal: exercise, nutrition, sleep. This is your foundation. You can't think clearly, manage emotions, or show up powerfully if your body is depleted. Yet people sacrifice sleep for productivity and wonder why they're making terrible decisions. Mental renewal: reading, learning, writing. Your mind is a muscle. If you're not growing it, it's atrophy. Most people stop learning after school and then coast on outdated knowledge for decades. Spiritual renewal: meditation, nature, music, whatever connects you to something beyond yourself. This is where you clarify values and find meaning. Without it, you're just a productivity machine without purpose. Social emotional renewal: deep relationships, service, contribution. Humans are wired for connection. Isolation, even successful isolation, slowly destroys you. Here's the trap. When life gets busy, the first things people cut are renewal activities. Skip the workout, work through lunch, cancel friend plans, stop reading. They think they're being productive. They're actually dulling the saw. I did this. Built a business, worked 90-hour weeks, felt productive. 6 months in, I was exhausted, making bad decisions, irritable with everyone. My effectiveness was dropping, but I kept pushing harder. Finally, I forced myself to block non-negotiable time for all 4 dimensions. Gym 3 times a week, reading 30 minutes daily, weekly phone calls with close friends, meditation every morning. Felt indulgent, like I was sacrificing productivity. Opposite happened. My thinking got clearer, my energy increased, my relationships improved. My work got better because I was sharper. I was working less, but accomplishing more. That's the paradox. The time you spend renewing yourself isn't time away from effectiveness. It's what makes effectiveness possible. Here's your action step. Look at the 4 dimensions. Pick one you've been neglecting. Schedule specific time for it this week. Not, "I'll try to fit it in." Actual calendar blocks. Treat it like any other important appointment. Maybe it's a 20-minute walk every day. Maybe it's calling an old friend. Maybe it's finally starting that book you've been meaning to read. Whatever it is, do it. Because sustainable effectiveness requires sustainable renewal. You can't sprint a marathon. And life is a marathon. Let's bring this together. You've learned 7 habits that build on each other. You can't skip to synergy without being proactive first. You can't put first things first without starting with the end in mind. These aren't life hacks. They're principles, and principles work, but only if you apply them. The difference between reading this and transforming is implementation. Most people will nod along, feel inspired, then return to their reactive, crisis-driven life. Don't be most people. Pick one habit starting tomorrow. Maybe proactive language. Maybe quadrant 2 time. Maybe listening instead of waiting to talk. Master that one for 30 days, then add the next. The goal isn't perfection by next week. It's being better 1 year from now. That only happens through consistent practice. Remember Marcus, the overwhelmed project manager? He started applying these habits, got proactive, clarified what mattered, scheduled important before urgent. 6 months later, same job, completely different experience. Not because circumstances changed, because he changed. That's what these 7 habits do. They don't make life easier. They make you capable of handling difficulty. 1 year from today, who do you want to become? Not what you want to achieve, who you want to be. Because achievements fade. Character compounds. These 7 habits are the foundation. Now go sharpen your saw. Then get to work. Your work. Starting now.